When working with trauma, we would do very well to examine the nature of suppression. Trauma and suppression tend to go hand in hand together. They oftentimes compound and snowball to lead to more trauma and more suppression. And we could see examples of this all around the world, where we find people in tremendous pain, not knowing what to do with their pain, distracting, trying to get away from it, stuffing it down, suppressing it until it explodes and bursts out the seams. And it may come out in unrelated ways or unconstructive ways, or it might explode out on the people who matter the most to us. When we look at our own individual lives, we can oftentimes find direct examples of this. If we look at our early life, we can oftentimes find the origin of this. We can find out where we first learned to suppress ourselves. If, for example, we had stressed parents, or we had difficult and challenging relationships with our parents, or if our parents were abusive, then we learned very early to suppress ourselves, to suppress our emotions, to suppress our boundaries. If we would have expressed our rage, our fear, our pain and sadness towards having difficult, challenging relationships with our parents, it most likely would have made the situation more stressful, more challenging, more dangerous. So we're kind of caught in this conundrum as children when we're going through difficult circumstances. On the one hand, our bodies are telling us there's a fear response here. There's anger, there's danger. This is something to avoid. These are people to avoid. And on the other hand, we're programmed for connection. We're dependent on the attachments. We can't survive without it as children. So we have this internal conflict, and we have to choose between ourselves, our emotions, our boundaries, and our relationships, our attachments, our connections. Just about every time we choose the attachments. So this becomes an adaptation, something that helps us tremendously in the short term, might even save our lives, and in the long term, it becomes the source of great suffering. For example, later in life, we might find ourselves in similar circumstances where we have a relationship that is stressful, challenging, abusive even, or we might have a work relationship where we're being treated in ways that are painful and hurtful. And rather than expressing our emotions, rather than expressing our boundaries, we sacrifice ourselves, we stuff this down, we suppress it to maintain our attachments. Now the thing about this is we don't make the choice to do it. We learned it so early in life, and at that point in life we didn't have any other options. This was the only thing that we could do. So we have been constricted down to this one pattern of suppressing ourselves to maintain attachments. This pattern is what causes us to suffer. It's a lot like a physical trauma to the body. Say, for instance, we break our arm. The first thing that we would do is constrict our mobility. We would suppress our range of motion. We would stop the arm from moving. We would have a cast placed on the arm until the arm is stabilized, and then we remove the cast and we begin exercising, stretching, rebuilding the muscle dexterity, building our range of motions and our mobility. If we don't remove that cast, the thing that protected the arm, then the cast becomes the source of great pain. Our arm would stay stiff and rigid and painful. It's the same with the emotional and mental trauma. We have to remove the adaptation that we once had. We have to become very aware that there is an adaptation. We have to become aware of this pattern of suppressing ourselves. We have to learn to identify and recognize our emotions. We have to be very clear about what our bodies are telling us, what boundaries we would want to set. Once we can begin to identify and recognize our emotions, we can begin to express them in constructive, helpful ways. We can begin to comfort and soothe these emotions. This is how we begin to process all that pain that is stored up in our bodies.